So within your career, what are one or two things that you're really proud of in the sense of kind of what you were just talking about?
The things I'm proud of is where looking at something and sort of simplifying and clarifying it can make some sense, and that can have a broader impact. So the stuff with microformats, where we basically said, well, couldn't we just use HTML to represent data? Why do we need to define something else? And then take that constraint and work that through. That was nice. Or the work with OpenSocial, where we said, here's a lot of people doing the same thing, but they're not talking to each other. Can we make them talk to each other and standardize that? I'm very excited about that. But those are things that are harder to point out and say you're running my code. It's much more these days of, here's a bunch of ideas that I've helped catalyze and fit together, and I can't take credit for all of Microformats or all of OpenSocial in any respect at all. But if I've been part of helping people to converse and connect about that's what I'm proud of. He was a lovely guy. He was very, very smart, very interesting to talk to. And I still keep citing him. He wrote this wonderful piece in 1999 about the internet that I just cannot resist citing at every opportunity because he got so much right. To some extent, he was living in the future because, I suppose partly because he had more money to spend on technology than most people had. But he wrote a whole bunch of things saying, why is it we have to use cables for everything? And why does everything have a different power supply and stuff? Which if you look at now, we have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, we have standardized USB charge, we have a whole bunch of stuff like that. And there's this stuff that he wrote 10, 15 years ago that was pointing out the problems with the technology, but in a witty and funny way that made people stop and think about it. And if you actually sit there and watch live TV, the only reason you're watching live TV is you're waiting for something to happen. So you're watching baseball and most of it is boring and there's a few little bits where it's exciting. Or you're watching the presidential election, waiting for the outcome. Or you're watching some news thing. And the live bits of this are generally people filling dead air waiting for something to happen, saying, well, I expect something's going to come out of a car soon. And I began to realize that this was actually a recipe for not stuff that isn't very interesting. The thing that is interesting about live is when it's two-way. That's the only time you actually need it. And I think the same problem runs through lots of these media, is that we see them as simulacra of previous media. And that leads to two traps. One trap is, it then becomes a battle, is when is blogging going to replace newspapers, which is this sort of boring debate that's been going on for 10 years. But you also get this problem that you're trying to model something else. That can be useful. Wikipedia is trying to model encyclopedia. That gives a context that means that the edits can work in that way. But it also sets up conflicts like the deletionist inclusionist debate of, well, this isn't important enough to be an encyclopedia, we should delete it, as opposed to, well, it's a database. How, what are you wasting by putting something there that nobody goes to? A sort of software development cultural change I've seen in my lifetime, which is, I was doing CD-ROM development. Now, with CD-ROM development, you're making little shiny silver disks that you press 1 million of and you sell to people. And so the model has to be lots and lots of upfront design testing and QA, then you press these things and go out and try to sell them. But the difference is now with the web, we can dynamically develop. We can build something, put it out there, see if it works, measure it, control it, iterate, try variations and keep moving from that. So we've got a software development process now that is much more like experimental. It's like, I'm going to build something, I'll try a few pieces out, I'll iterate and do that. So one of the things I'm seeing is that we're doing the same thing with specifications now. OpenSocial is a way of defining social infrastructure for the web at its heart. And what that means is a bunch of APIs for representing common operations used around social things. So that there are 4 primary operations there. There's profile information about people and connections between people. So we've got a fairly well-defined set of profile specification, which is also mapped to the portable context stuff. It's activities, things people do, so an event stream over time that's labeled by who did it and what they did. There's a data persistence API for OpenSocial, which is again coupled to people, so you can store small amounts of data about people and do a query back to get the same data items associated with the friends of the person that you're looking at. So it's basically solving the rather messy database join problem of tell me about this person and their friends. You delegating that to them. Then the fourth one is sending messages. It's I'd like to send something to this person. So those are the sort of 4 key APIs. But the point is to have a layer of abstraction between the container sites that are custodians of social data, that have rich sets of information about people and the connections between them and the ability to do this stuff, and an application that is focused on a particular task and doesn't want to have to replicate that whole stuff. Whereas for any given application, you can almost always augment it and make it more interesting by connecting it to people and to people you know. Or even just connecting it to information about you that you're willing to share. You know, if I know where you are, that's a useful thing. If I know, other places you've lived, that's also useful. I can potentially connect you to information about those places too. There are lots of things that can make the app more useful and more intelligent by drawing on context. But the problem is having to declare the context to the application each time is very annoying. So being able to draw on the context you've already established elsewhere is the sort of key to OpenSocial. And so we specified these different pieces of it and have APIs for doing that. You know, the key for me for a spec is that people can interoperate without knowing of each other's existence, just because they're writing to a common spec. If you do that, then if that happens, then you know you've got something right. There was a Korean developer, IDtail, who came to visit. They were in the States, and they said, "Can we come and talk about OpenSocial?" I said, "Sure." I was expecting to pitch them on it. I was expecting to say, "OpenSocial is a wonderful thing. You should build this as part of your social network." And they said, "Oh, we've already built it."
Well, that's great.
I was like, "Oh, yeah. Look, we use OpenID and log in here, and we build an OpenSocial container. Oh, and here's our developer site in Korean that explains how other people can build gadgets." And I was like, "Okay, that was good." So that was my sort of moment where I said, "Yeah, we're a real standard."
That's
now.
a real nice validation.
That's like, yeah, this is where we are.
Yeah.
We keep seeing that. You know, we as we go around the world, you know, talking about this stuff, we keep finding more and more developers who are already there and building on that. And that's that's what makes the web work. You know, the fact that any website anywhere can publish something, and everyone else can read it.